So this whole summer we have been in a series called Parables. What we've been doing is exploring all of these amazing stories, lessons that Jesus gives us in the Bible, teaching us some incredible truth in a really practical way. And to set our message up today, I would love to share with you a story of an incredible failure that I had. Is that okay? Can I share that with you guys? So, have you ever thought whenever you went to go work on a project, I know how to do that. I'll figure it out as I go. That was me on a really big project that I had a few years ago. I don't know if you look at me and think that, wow, that guy probably knows how to use some tools, and he's probably very handy. I hate to break the illusion. I'm not, okay? Not one of my skill sets, not one of the things the Lord gave me. And I remember we had this big project because there was this gymnasium at this workplace that I was at, and they wanted to replace all of these sound panels that were 8 feet tall, 4 feet wide, and 4 inches thick, and we had to take these things down. We had to put new fabric on it, and then we had to put them back up on the wall. These things were 12 feet high off the ground, and they told me what you're going to do is you're going to use some liquid nail. Now, if you don't know what liquid nail is, it's the worst thing in the world, okay? It is absolutely awful. It's like somebody just took pure cement and put it in a plastic bottle. But they had one of these guns, and I remember I had a volunteer come up to me, and they said, "Hey, do you know how to use this thing?" I was like, it's a bottle of glue, and it's a gun. This shouldn't be that hard. You just put one in the other and pull back the handle. That should be it, right? Well, I'm going to just, in case you need to know this ever, whenever you have one of these, you are supposed to cut off the tip, and then you're supposed to prime the inside of it. Otherwise, you have a problem. So this guy hands it to me. He says, "You know what to do." And I was like, I'll figure it out. I can do it by myself. So I put the thing in there. I cut off the tip, and I start squeezing. And then a few other people come around, and they're like, "Hey, are you sure you're doing that correctly?" And I'm like, "I'm sure I'm fine. I'm sure this is, I have no issues with it. I'm pretty sure I can do this right." So I keep going, and they're like, "Hey, I feel like something should have happened because no glue's coming out of this thing." And I'm like, "I'm sure it's fine." And I keep squeezing and squeezing, and everybody keeps coming around, and they're like, "What's wrong? Why isn't this working?" And I'm like, "I'm sure it'll be fine." And then all of a sudden, as you can imagine, I keep squeezing, and then I hear a really loud pop. Can I tell you, the worst thing to ever have happen to your hair is to get liquid nail all up in it, okay? Because this thing exploded all over me, and everybody's looking at me like, "We thought you knew how to do it." I thought I knew how to do it. It seemed simple. Have you had moments like this before where you thought in life, "I can do it by myself"? I don't know about you, but I have way too moments in life, too many moments, whenever I think to myself, "I'll do it by myself. It's fine." Whether it's simple things, I'm like, I can do it by myself. I don't need to talk to them about these emotional problems that I'm dealing with. I'll deal with it by myself. And somehow, I never deal with it by myself. Like when I get into a mess, whenever things get really disorganized, and it's something way outside the realm of what I understand, I keep saying to myself, I can do it by myself. I can figure it out. And what I realize after a while is, I need help. And what I think is, it's not just a saying of, I can do it by myself. If we were to dig down beneath it, there's a lot of things that would motivate each and every one of us to think, I don't need to ask for help. I don't need to bring anybody else into this. Maybe in one sense, it's part of our upbringing and our pride where we were told, if you ask somebody else for help, it's because you're not good enough, and you should know how to do it by yourself. So for a lot of us, we think this is how I prove to other people I'm smart, I'm capable, I don't need anybody else to help me. For others of us, it is this really hard thing where we never knew how to ask. We just never knew how to get those words out, because just saying, "Can you help me? Can you be here with me in this major problem that I'm trying to deal with, this anxiety that is crippling me, this thing," it's just making it loud and making it and proving to everybody that I've just got a major weakness. Before you know it, each and every one of us find ourselves in a spot where we are just going in circles. And I wish this was something that was just unique to us. I wish this was just such a small thing, but we can see how this escalates, how this causes more problems. How even whenever we see it in church, how we've had things that can happen over and over again, but we don't actually address it. We don't actually deal with it. We just start saying things like, "I'll just deal with it myself. It's fine." And what we're really saying is, I don't want to deal with it right now. I don't want to deal with it ever. And what we're going to be looking at today is a parable that Jesus teaches on, a parable on humility. And this word already is one that for so many of us, when we think humility, we think of this attached word, humiliated. And when I think of humility, I think of that as associated as, okay, I finally got to the very end. I finally in this spot where I'm saying, all right, fine, I will have some humility and say, I need some help. Can we just reframe this for a second? Because I want you to just see this in life. The weakest people that you know are the ones that have no humility. The people that are the most disconnected in your life are the ones that have no humility. The people that you and I would look at and we say, how on earth do you become a human being that is so intolerable? A human being that nobody wants to be around? A human being that has nobody in their lives that you really like? It's because we're lacking a piece of humility. And I wish this was something that was brand new, but even at the very beginning of the Bible, we see this moment where a lack of humility takes place, which leads us as human beings into sin. This moment where the first human beings are living in perfection, and they're being told, you know what? You got to do something else. You're not good enough right now. Don't have any humility to ask. Just go and do what you need to do to get where you need to go by yourself. Before we get into this parable, I want to tell you just a new concept or a new idea for humility. And it's not new in the sense that we're really reframing the word, but it's new so that you can see this from a different angle with the strength of it. Here's the main idea of this message. It's that humility is seeing the whole picture instead of my limited perspective. Humility in itself is this massive perspective change. This moment whenever your mind, you are making a conscious choice that I am going to see something beyond myself. So I want to take you to the parable that Jesus teaches on this whole idea of humility, this concept, so that we can look at how we can live our lives. So we're going to be looking at Luke chapter 18, verses 9 through 14, and it starts off saying this. Then Jesus told this story to some who had great confidence in their own righteousness. Now stop right there. Have you met those people who seem to have great confidence in how amazing they are, how perfect they are, how awesome they are? Those are not people that I like being in the same room with. They're honestly people that is like, you seem like you can stay alone in this room for a while because you seem to just like yourself too much. So he's talking to these people and scorned everyone else, and it said, 2 men went out to the temple to pray. One was a Pharisee, and the other was a despised tax collector. The Pharisee stood by himself and prayed this prayer, I thank you, God, that I am not like the other people, cheaters, sinners, adulterers. I'm certainly not like that tax collector. I fast twice a week, and I give you 1/10 of my income. But the tax collector stood at a distance and dared not even lift his eyes to heaven as he prayed. Instead, he beat his chest in sorrow, saying, O God, be merciful to me, for I am a sinner. I tell you, this sinner, not the Pharisee, returned home justified before God. For those who exalt themselves will be humbled, and those who humble themselves will be exalted. Now, just for some context on this for these two people, the Pharisee was somebody who would have studied so much of the Bible, so much of God's commands, his laws. This was somebody who quite literally, as he's saying there in that prayer of, I fast, I pray, this is someone who's around so many of the things that would be motivating you to become more like Jesus, and yet somehow he's not because his perspective has become so limited. What he can see is just so condensed. And yet we see a tax collector here, and not just a tax collector. Jesus says a despised tax collector. Can I tell you, in that time, the tax collectors already were despised. Nobody. It's not like anybody was like, oh, there's the good tax collectors, and they did not like tax collectors whatsoever. Jesus was purposely trying to pick a figure for this story that everybody collectively would say in unison, we don't like that guy. And this is what Jesus is using to compare 2 men, one who chose to have humility and the other one who didn't. And I want to break this down a little bit more so that we can understand really the strength behind humility, the strength that exists in it, rather than just saying, okay, God, I just need to humble myself. I want you to see practically the strength that humility has, the strength that it can bring to your own life, the freedom that it can bring to your heart and your life as we're starting to see the whole picture rather than just a limited, small perspective. I have a few thoughts I want to share with you. The first one that we look at is that this, for humility, I have to look beyond myself. To look beyond myself. Can I just share a sobering reality with you is that whenever we look at our lives, we will see that there is a giant spectrum, and we will see at one side pride and the other side humility. And we're going to see whenever we look at people, ourselves included, a lot of our actions, that we will either have pride that's motivating a lot of our lives or humility. And what happens for so many of the moments in life whenever we see ourselves operating out of pride is because we have a limited perspective. Like, just think about this for a second. You might have the one coworker that's just way too into their job. Like, they've got a title that is so low, but they think they're so important. Have you seen this before? I've seen this at, like, places that have no reason to be that. Like, you walk into some places and it's like, why on earth are you acting like you are so big and so important? Like, it's not that big of a deal. But for ourselves, whenever we let pride motivate us, pride lead us, pride become the thing that is so important, what happens is our perspective starts to become narrow. Think about it again, this Pharisee, this person, if you were really looking and you were really trying to get closer and closer to God, what's unique is when we see other points in the Bible, there's a writer named Paul who continued to write so much of the New Testament, and what we see happen as he continues on in his journey of following Jesus is every letter, the way that he introduces himself, gets worse and worse and worse. He never starts off and says, hey, you know what? My name is Paul, and I'm amazing because I wrote some of the Bible. By the end of his writings, he's saying, hello, church. My name is Paul. I am the chief of sinners. As Paul continued to follow Jesus, it's not like he started to see and go, wow, I'm just such a terrible person. He started to look beyond himself, which is where a lot of us fall into. It is very hard for us to be able to look beyond ourselves. Can I tell you the hardest thing to be able to do to look beyond ourselves is whenever we're trying to find humility in isolation. Can I tell you it's nearly impossible to try to find humility by ourselves. Even this type of a story right here, we're not seeing humility happen of one person who's just randomly there. It's one person before God. Can I tell you the ways that you and I often find humility that we don't like are in conversations with people. Conversations where people have to tell you, hey, this pattern of your life, it's destructive. It's not good. Man, I hate when people tell me that. I hate whenever I have moments. And I've told some of y'all, especially in some of our classes that we have, I especially have so much accountability in my own life as far as even little things that we do in this church that I have moments when people tell me, hey, Colin, you got to do this. And I'm like, I don't want to do that. That feels rough. That feels painful. I have so many. And what I find for myself is I can feel like I am the most humble person in the world, but we don't find humility by ourselves. We find humility with someone else. We find humility when we look beyond ourselves and we start to incorporate other people's voices into our lives. And we have to find the right voices for those, safe voices for those, voices that we've actually tried to create safe places for. Even here at this church, whenever you see us talking about things like spiritual mentorship, these are safe places for you to be able to hear other people that can help bring humility and not criticism into your life. People that are able to help speak to you, to build you up instead of just breaking you down. Because there are moments where we feel criticism and other moments whenever we feel humility and some moments whenever we don't know how to tell the difference. Some moments when humility hurts. Some moments when humility is chipping away at our pride in a way that God is trying to bring freedom to our lives, but we've misinterpreted. And we tell ourselves, I'll have humility. And if I can just talk to some of my church people for a second, we can say that we have humility because, I do this. I show up at church, and I do these things. Can I remind you of this Pharisee who was in that exact same place who said, look at me. I fast. I do these things. I do all this stuff. But at the end of the day, what he was doing to try to gain humility was not actually looking at anybody else, but was just looking internally. This tax collector standing there saying, I can't even look at you because I'm so aware that I'm not enough, but I have to look beyond myself to find it. So when we're talking about expanding our perspective, trying to see the whole picture, you have to understand with humility, you'll never find it by yourself. The second thing that I want to tell you is this with humility, is that we have to take an honest look at your mess. Can I remind you, these two men who went before God, the first said, I fast twice a week and give you 1/10 of my income. The second said, oh God, be merciful to me. I'm a sinner. I need you to understand, with humility, there is a fine line and a difference between humility and insecurity. By ourselves, we find ourselves in a place of saying, oh, I have tons of humility. No, you have insecurity in your life. You have things that you're willing to say out loud. Oh, well, I'm not good at this, and I'm not good at that, and I'm not. And if you notice, humility is not something we see from our perspective. Humility can't be gained from just what we see. It's gained whenever we earn a relationship with somebody else, and we earn the empathy and sympathy and perspective of somebody else's voice. Otherwise, what you and I will call humility is really just insecurity. I can tell you for so much of my life, the things that people would try to say, hey, you know what, you should do this. And I would one up and be like, I should really do all these things then. I should really try to do all these different things in my life, right? Humility is able to receive and be able to have an honest look at our mess. Can I tell you one of the things that we even do here that I absolutely love, that is not meant to be a thing to bring shame into your life, but more peace, is confession. It's a biblical practice of us exercising humility with someone else to be able to say, I need healing and I need freedom in my life. Because whenever we're just saying, hey, I've got a mess and I've got a problem, but I'm not bringing anybody else into it, what we find is we really just chip away at our own confidence. We break ourselves down. We're not able to see ourselves as anything more than what we have self-diagnosed as our own mess. And can I just tell you, I think we as a society, and I'm sorry, I know I sound 1,000 with those words just there, okay? But we're so easy at self-diagnosing. I don't know what happened. All my best friends all of a sudden all know all of their own mental health issues that they have. And if you ask them, who did you talk to? They go, ChatGPT. They diagnosed me. And I'm like, you're probably crazy then, but you don't know what just you're getting in this own vacuum that's just you and your own voice and something else that's not real. We need to bring other people into it to be able to look at your mess. Can I tell you why this is so impactful? Because whenever we're talking about looking at our own mess, looking at the real things that are going on in our lives, what happens is a few things. One, you're going to recognize that it's not as bad as you think, meaning this. There's a lot of us that there is the problem, and then there's everything else that we add emotionally to the problem. It's like, okay, I'm bad financially, and because of that, I'm a terrible person, and I'm awful, and all that. And it's, when I bring somebody else into it, they're like, you're actually a really great person. You just need to get this right here in order. It's like, okay, all right, now I can actually look at the mess, and I can clean it up. Sometimes whenever it's just me looking at it alone, I get overwhelmed. When I look at just one problem and I'm like, where do I even start? For some of us, it's just this thing where we're like, I don't know how to tell people in church that I don't read my Bible and I don't know where to start. Nobody's going to judge you. We're not going to look at you and go, you terrible person. You've been in it for so. What we have to do is have an honest look at our mess. Because I can tell you this, if we don't honestly look at our mess with a level of humility, what happens is we have a distorted view of it. We have a messed up view of it most of the time. We're really in a spot, in a perspective where we can't see all of it. We will, on one side of it, either overreact to it or the other side, underreact to it, acting like it is the biggest deal in the world, in which case that's not healthy, or it's not that big of a deal. When you and I open up to somebody else, and we say, here is the mess of what's going on, especially first taking it to Jesus and saying, this is what is going on in my life. What we do is we receive strength, we receive healing, we receive love. We don't get there without humility, the perspective to be able to see ourselves, because just in our limited picture, what we can see is something absolutely horrible. That's why you and I have to have the humility, exactly like this tax collector, to say, even in front of other people, despite what other people, other relationships, what they might say, I need to be honest and take this before God. Because the final thing in this, which is probably one of my favorite things about humility, exactly how this ends, is that we look forward. We talked about this with humility, okay? I have to look beyond myself. That's how I gain a lot of my perspective. I have to look honestly at myself, at the mess, but then I have to look forward. I need you to understand for a second, humility for so much of ourselves, especially in church, humility gets associated so much with shame. If we make you feel bad enough about it, and only if you feel bad enough about it, will you be able to move forward. Can I tell you, shame stops you from moving forward. Shame does not help you. Guilt does not help you. What happens whenever we take our things to God? I need you to understand the full process on this, because it's not as if I just take it before God and I give it to him and then we'll see if something happens. No, the latter part of humility that happens is that Jesus picks us up and allows us to move forward. Whenever I'm looking at the problems that are just there in my own life, when I'm looking at situations and I'm overburdened by them, I'm overwhelmed, I can't do anything, and I give it to Jesus with some actual honesty, and I bring somebody else into it with me to say, here's what I'm going through, here's what's happening, here's my limited perspective. I need God's voice to speak to this. What happens is it's not just healing, it's not just hope. It is like strength is put back inside of me so that I realize I can actually move and look forward again. Because if I can just be so bold, there's a lot of us that have been in some spots in our lives where we're saying, I'm stuck right here. I'm in this spot because of my insecurity, because of my shame. And I'm here to remind you, when we humble ourselves before God, it's not like he continually pushes us down. He picks us up. He allows us to be able to move forward, to be able to step back in to something new. That's why the end of that entire parable, he says, the humble will be exalted. He's really quoting another thing that Jesus' half-brother says again here in James 4:10. It says, humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up in honor. Humble yourselves before the Lord, and he will lift you up in honor. It's this moment where Jesus is saying what would be said to us again. I know that life is going to try to put you down. If you will just tell me where you're at, and we honestly talk about this, he will pick you back up to be able to move forward. Can I just tell you the issue? If I can just be honest as far as what a lot of pastors won't say so much of the time. We have been talking to so many people. We've seen so many people, and I've watched it. I'll sit down with so many, and it's not my place to talk for you. But I've watched as people are trapped behind the walls saying, I can't say the honest thing. I can't say the real thing because what's going to happen? Who's going to tell me I can't attend here anymore? Who's going to tell me I need to find a new church? Who's going to tell me I'm too messed up? I'm so beyond everything. This is why Jesus is using a comparison right here to say, you might look and say, I need to act like I have it all together, going and attending church, being at all these places and finding out Jesus can see straight through that and see that Pharisee in that parable, that person that all of us, myself included, can act like at some moments whenever we say, I can just get it all together, I can finally be there. We don't get anywhere. Whenever we choose to open up, the perspective changes. The light that we thought, man, there's no way to move forward, all of a sudden Jesus starts to do it. If I can just tell you, for years and years and years, I was the most uncomfortable person coming to church. I never liked coming. I never liked being the person that was ever in the room. And you have to understand, church wasn't just like a thing that was by choice. That was like our family culture. We had to be in church. I was almost born in a church, okay? And I'm saying this even as somebody that felt like, okay, God, you're leading me to do something more within a church. I still felt wildly uncomfortable in church because my pride and my own arrogance kept me from being able to open up about my own addictions that I had, about my pornography addictions, my sexual addictions, my problems that I had for years and years and years. I remember moments whenever people would say, okay, Colin, let's have you pray. And I would have these quick little moments, maybe you had them too, where I'd look and I'd be like, God, we cool? We all right? Because like, I know what I did last night, and I don't feel good about it. I don't feel right. I don't feel like I should be here in your presence. I don't feel like I should. And what I realized was when I finally got to the moment when I felt like I can't do anything else. I remember sitting down with a close friend, and I remember him opening up to me and him telling me, hey, here's what's going on in my life. I just need somebody to support me. And I looked back at him and I said, I'll do it for you if you do it for me. Because here's what's going on in my life. Here's the problems that are there. Here's what's happening. Pride keeps us trapped so much of the time where we won't even open up to be able to say, I'm hurting and I need help right now. I've got a lot of problems and I've got things and I've been stuck for years and years and years, probably exactly like this person Jesus is thinking of with this Pharisee. Someone who looked like they had it all together. Someone who acted like they had it all together. Jesus is not looking to say, hey, how perfect have you been? He's looking at your heart. Because whenever we choose to humble ourselves before Jesus, when we choose to say to him, honestly, here's where I'm at. Here's the problems that are going on. I'm going to look beyond just my perspective. I want your perspective towards things. Here's where I'm at. Here's my mess. What happens is we get to look forward. And can you just imagine the world around us if we just had an ounce more humility? Can you imagine the fights that probably would have been stopped in your own life? The people you would have never started an argument with, but you did because you're probably right. You probably knew what was going on. What if we had humility to try to gain a greater perspective? What about the things that you've been holding back on doing your entire life, and you're saying, I can't do that. I'm not that person. I'm not skilled enough. I'm not talented enough. I'm not like this person. What if Jesus came in to change your perspective, to remind you he told you something to do? He gave you a dream. He put something in you that was not just a joke. It was a reality that he wanted you to live out. What would happen if we were able to be honest? If we were able to gain humility, to see the perspective change, to get the whole picture, to be able to get clarity in our lives? Because I can just tell you about myself, every day I need more humility. I need more of God's picture of life. I need more of his perspective. And I can tell you this, the more and more that I choose to humble myself, the more and more I see God pick me up to be able to help me move forward. Curious what would happen if your own life, what would happen if we started to bring more humility in? If we started to act exactly like that tax collector, saying, whether I am despised, hated, and everything, I am going to choose to bring humility into my life. I want you to just close your eyes for this next moment. I want to be able to pray with you, especially if there's any part of this that you're hearing and you're feeling, and it's not just that you can sense, hey, I'm saying something that's resonating, but the Holy Spirit's really putting something on your heart right now of, hey, this really specific area of your life, you've been holding on to this for far too long. You've been walking into this by yourself, and this is a moment where God might be speaking to you, saying, hey, you do not have to walk alone any longer. The path out of this is going to be one of humility, and it's going to be one where he picks you up, not one where he pushes you down in shame. What if you were able to take that step forward right now? That thing that he's telling you to do, because I hope and I believe that you haven't just been hearing my voice, but you've been hearing him. If there's something like that specific, I want you to just place your hand on your heart, because we're going to pray together. We're just going to take a moment to be able to really just allow humility into our own hearts. So hand on your heart or not, I want to pray for you in this moment. God, you see each and every one of us that are in these spots, these places where we are overwhelmed, overburdened by so many of the problems, so many of the things that we've held on to. Would you give us the strength and the humility to be able to move forward? Would you give us the strength to be able to step into something new? Would you give us the strength to be able to look beyond ourselves, to be able to look and honestly say, here is my mess, and to be able to see the pathway forward that you're giving? Because you haven't abandoned us. You haven't walked away. Even whenever it looks like you're not there. Jesus, we believe your presence, that you're here. God, I ask your courage to invade. Your courage to step into places of our hearts where we've said, Jesus, you're not welcome here. Jesus, for each and every one of us, especially those of us who are saying, I can see it and I know where I need to step in and I need to allow more humility. God, would you allow us to be able to step into that with your strength and your power? Lord, we pray that in your name. Amen.